Buckle in, sports fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show. The program will be starting in just a couple of minutes, so grab your popcorn and get ready to enjoy the show. While you're waiting, make sure you're following us on social media at WHBC Stream and staying tuned to WHBCStream.com. We're so glad to have you today on the program, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line on Twitter or call the show 352-639-0036. And thanks again for tuning in.
HBC. Well, it is a very good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there. We are live from the WHBC studios in Tallahassee, Florida, coming at you live today, Monday, March the 8th at 9:02 p.m. live for about, call it an hour or so tonight. This is the first show that we have done since the beginning of exhibition games in spring training for the Rays, so we have 7 games to catch everyone up on, catch myself up on, you, everyone listening as well, and then talk a little bit about the games ahead and how everyone's tracking. I would say overall the record really doesn't matter. I really think for the most part really taking much of anything away from spring training is kind of a, well, it's risky business. I guess to put it that way. It obviously wasn't always this way, but as really sports have become more year-round, we focus on everything that happens. These are just guys getting ready for the season. Of course, they may not be hitting well, or you know, pitchers are getting lit up and stuff like that. And no, I'm not talking about what was his name? Not John Means, but the other guy that used to pitch for the Orioles that has been just outright terrible for the Rays thus far. But outside of that, really taking anything away, really doesn't mean too much. It's cool to see things like Wander Franco and his what was it, 550-foot home run over the offices in right field in Charlotte Sports Park, and seeing some of the new Rays additions donning those Sunday blues. But outside of that, I mean, it's definitely keep everything in perspective, and teasing a segment, I think, when we're on the air next week. There was a really good kind of study, if you will, done that compared a team's spring training record to ultimately what their regular season record was. And obviously there wasn't really much of any correlation between the two. Spring training record really means nothing. I believe the Rays are, I want to say they're under 500 at this point. I think 3-4 through 7 games played. But before we get through to any of that, and we'll take some phone calls if anyone wants to make them after we break down the games. But the first thing I wanted to just start off with, because I had not discussed it previously on the first 2 shows that we did to kind of kick off the 2021 season. I was reading an article earlier today on ESPN, and it was the 6 or 6 playoff teams from last year that are the least likely to make the playoffs this year, with, of course, the playoff format going back and forth. There was 16 playoff teams last year. This year, it will be going back to the 10-team format, so, it makes sense, the 6 teams that aren't going to make it, and thankfully the Rays were not a part of that list, because it seems like all the national media always is underestimating the Rays. But there was just a blurb at the beginning of it. I'll just read it to you. Basically saying that they're going back to 10 playoff teams in 2021. That will make the regular season must-count enthusiasts happy, at least until the 103-win San Diego Padres finish second to the Los Angeles Dodgers and then have to face Jacob deGrom and the 89-win New York Mets in the loser-go-home wildcard game, while an 86-win NL Central champion gets a pass into the division series round. So I have seen a lot of this just kind of snark towards I guess mainly baseball traditionalists, but I include myself in the camp of I really think that the 10-team playoff format is just fine as it is. You could argue, maybe even that's too much, that the 2 wildcard teams, just have 4. But I think 5 is a fair number. That compared to other sports, the percentage of total teams that make the playoffs under that format, makes baseball. It sets it apart from the other ones. You look at the NBA, where over half of the teams in the league make the playoffs, and ultimately what that does is it just really waters down the regular season. And if you're talking NFL and it's a 16-game regular season, okay. Give more teams a chance, or even with the 82-game season in the NHL and the NBA. But if baseball is going to continue to play 162 games, I think to include over half the league in the postseason, really, to me, just doesn't make any sense. It would cause a lot of issues. I understand what it's trying to do. Obviously, it brings in more revenue for all the teams. There's more postseason TV money, obviously, which is spread around to the different teams. And I think to have more teams in the hunt towards the end of the season would work, in theory, to keep fans of all teams really interested down the stretch, unless your team is just really horrible, like you're an Orioles fan or a Pirates fan or something like that. But if you're a Miami Marlins team that's kind of in the hunt because it's easier to get in the playoffs, more attendance later in the season, because we see with those really bad teams, the attendance really dwindles towards the end, and get the TV viewership consistent through the season. That would be, I guess, the pros of the expanded playoff. But to me, I really think it works to the opposite. I think that if the MLB made that 16-team playoff format permanent, which they very well may do, by the way, if there's going to be a labor strike or whatever ends up happening with the pending agreement between the MLB and the Players Association that they're going to have to do, I believe, at the end of this season. So the 16-team playoff format is a very realistic possibility, but I think if that becomes permanent, it's going to become kind of like the NBA in a sort where, unless you're a fan, I guess, of a really good team or a really bad team, if you're a Lakers fan or you're a, Orlando Magic fan. But if you're somewhere in the middle, it doesn't, the regular season really means nothing to you. It's wake me up when the playoffs start, because, unless you're an absolute trash fire, all you have to be is average. And even I think, all the time in the NBA, you see teams below 500. And last year, in the 60-game season for the MLB, we saw teams under 500 get into the postseason. So you could have a losing team and you still get in the playoffs. So the regular season really means nothing. And I think really from start to finish, the attendance and the TV viewership, I think, would reflect that. At least that's kind of the theory I have, only because it's what we've seen with the NBA. You get prime time numbers and things like that, but day in and day out, I think the numbers aren't going to be the same. And I think also, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, or the two sides of a coin, whatever you want to kind of describe it as. But the dynamic we have right now between buyers and sellers in Major League Baseball, that is definitely going to change, and I think that's something maybe the MLB wants. They don't want teams tanking necessarily or trading away all their good players at the trade deadline to try and lose more games and get rid of payroll, etc. But if you get in a situation where, basically, half the teams in the league are making the playoffs, you're really not going to have anyone selling at the deadline because everyone believes that, they're still in the hunt. The Orioles or a team like that that's already out of the mix could sell, but there's a reason why they're a bad team. They don't have a whole lot of good players to even trade away anyway. Same thing with the Pirates. They've pretty much traded everyone away. The best example right now I could give is with the Chicago Cubs. Let's say if this was the 16-team playoff format, Javier Baez, Kyle Schwarber, Anthony Rizzo, all their contracts are up at the end of the season, so they're likely probably to trade all those guys away, most likely at the deadline because they're not going to be able to re-sign them, probably anyway. But if this was the 16-team playoff format, you're in a situation where, the Cubs aren't trading away those players. And I think part of what's made the postseason so good is some of those really, really good teams adding just another player like the Dodgers did a few years ago, adding Manny Machado. And I know they ended up losing in the World Series. But trades like that, I think, makes the postseason a little more interesting. And I think the dynamic is just, it's fine the way it is, and I think if the playoff format changed, then all that would change. I think such a big part of baseball is trades, and if everyone thinks they're going to be competitive for the playoffs, then you're not going to see as many trades, and I think that's ultimately a negative thing. So that's just something I wanted to get off my chest, kind of say my piece on that. I'm really against the expanded playoff format. Don't get me wrong. I understand the support for it and the reasons why, and I'm not suggesting that there's no way we're going to have it. I think there's a fairly decent chance, under the next collective bargaining agreement, that we will have the new playoff format. Money obviously being king, and that format creates more money, at least initially. So. That's basically my feeling on that. And now wanting to talk about the first 7 spring training games for the Tampa Bay Rays. The first one wasn't televised. The first 2, I believe, weren't. And then the ESPN game last Tuesday on the 2nd, and then Fox Sports Sun it rolled out, I guess, their plan to do. I think they're televising 14 out of the almost 30 or so games. So it looks like about half the games are going to be on TV, and same thing kind of goes with the radio. We have a couple games coming up this week. The Thursday and Friday games, they're not on TV and they're not on the radio, so won't be able to follow those. But the weekend games are, TV and radio, so you'll be able to take in some of them. And then something that I just wanted to go back on, I had mentioned it. I think the show we did, not last Thursday, but the week prior on Thursday, that was right before Fox Sports Sun had announced their television plan. And I guess they didn't do the rebrand yet, but they're soon to be a Bailey Sports Network. I think it's Sinclair that owns all the regional sports networks. Fox Sports Sun is not actually under Fox anymore. They just are, I guess, still under that name because they haven't underwent a rebrand. So, if you're seeing, Fox Sports Sun goes away one morning and it's why is Bally Sports having the Rays? That's just the reason why that's the direction that it is going in. So the first game that was played, it was Sunday, February 28th. A Rays 9-7 win over the Atlanta Braves. This was a 7-inning game. We know until March 13th, all the games are scheduled for 7 innings. They can be up to as much as 9 and decreased in length to as little as 5 innings. And we've seen, I think, already a couple 6-inning games as well. So with the pitching and everything, I didn't really get some of it at first. I know the Rays, they have the largest spring training roster, I believe, the second most ever since, I think, 1999 was the only one that had more. But they're not actually bringing the entire roster or even as many as they would traditionally to these spring training, stadiums. So the reason for the limited length of the games is you're not bringing all your kind of minor league arms and everything, because if you have 30 or 40 pitchers, whatever, on your roster, 9 innings every day is not a big deal. But they're not bringing all those guys, because of social distancing and the bus rides and whatever. They're only bringing in a limited amount of numbers, so they're not bringing enough pitchers where you can say, I just need someone to get an inning or two today. So we're seeing all these shortened spring training games, and I think towards the regular season, we'll see more 9-inning games because the pitchers will be more stretched out anyway, and we'll be moving in that direction. But talking about the first game, it was Chris Ellis, the minor leaguer, to start the mound, spring training opening day, if you will, through the first inning, walked the first 2 men, and then got out of the inning scoreless. First outings for a lot of these guys, not a whole lot to take away other than, I know, for example, guys like Glaz now just making sure their velocity is where it needs to be and things like that. Talking about the pitching, how we'll do this, by the way, talk about the pitching and then the hitting, position, players, defense, and then whatever other kind of miscellaneous notes. Hunter Strickland made his Rays debut. He walked a pair and gave up a single, so a run given up in the process there for him in his first spring training appearance as a Ray. Andrew Kittredge's first outing of the spring, 2 hits and a pass ball and a Willie Adames error allowed a run to score. Jeffrey Springs, the 28-year-old left-hander acquired in the Ronaldo Hernandez trade with the Red Sox, made his Rays debut, walked a man, hit another man by a pitch, so a total of 2 earned runs in the inning, 2 hits, and also 2 strikeouts in there as well. So I think the left-handed side of the bullpen is a bit thin, so keeping an eye on those guys that have that ability. Jeffrey Springs and others. Stetson Alley made his Rays debut. This was not a guy that I really covered when I was looking through the transactions log. I didn't include not recognizable names that were signed to minor league deals, only because that's just a routine kind of part of spring and going through the motions. But I did not realize Stetson Alley, he throws triple digits. I think unofficially the highest he's been clocked in at was 102, so just he has that ability. I did a little bit of reading about him. He's just really an interesting guy. He's still a rookie, I believe, but he's, I think, late 20s, and he started off as a pitcher, obviously, with the velocity, but then he moved to a hitter, and now he's back as a pitcher. And like I said, I think he's made a handful of major league appearances, but he's still classified as a rookie. So one of those kind of projects, if you will. Kyle Snyder, the pitching coach, Stan Borowski, the bullpen coach. It just seems like the Rays have such a well-oiled machine in kind of bringing in these pitchers. David Hess was the name of the guy earlier that I was blanking on. That's just been absolutely horrendous. I think at like an ERA of 45 whatever in the 2 or 3 innings that he just has looked really bad. But to bring the ability to kind of bring in those guys and low risk, high reward. If it doesn't work out, you're paying them, whatever the minor league minimum, I guess, is, $750,000. But if it does work out, you've got a guy in your bullpen, I believe, from the right-handed side that can, throw 100 miles an hour. At that price, would be really nice if that works out. I don't think he'll start on the major league roster, but just someone. Really, what happened last year was just. If I had told you, that Ryan Thompson, Ryan Sheriff, John Curtis, those guys really are kind of like the Stetson Alleys and the Hunter Stricklands of this year, guys that, don't seem that important. They're on the minor league roster. They're going to start in the minors. But if there's injuries, whatever, with the bullpen, to have that depth, have guys backing them up, I think is a really important thing. Now, looking at the hitting side, Meadows DH'd. It was really good to see. He was 1 for 2 with the home run, so really nice to see that power early when position players had reported. Of course, we heard all the talk about with him that he had cut down weight and he was back to kind of his 2019 form. We had seen in 2020 it was definitely a struggle for Meadows, the bout with COVID-19, and it seemed like he bulked up a little bit, but it kind of resulted in lesser bat speed and the things that come with that. So we had heard the talk, and then Meadows really, put it into practice already in the first spring game, which was cool to see him go deep. Rosarena was in right field. It looks like they want to get him experience at both left and right. I believe right was his traditional spot, and then they did get him some time in left a little bit later during the week. Rosarena went 1 for 2, and he got a single in the first inning. The game that February 20th, that was his 26th birthday, so there was all the kind of festivities and all the stuff with that. But to see him, I think it's kind of, amongst Rays fans and probably amongst anyone who follows the MLB, it's with a postseason that good, is he going to be able to follow it up? And those doubts started to creep in, and then I just thought it was funny that, the first inning of the first spring game, he's already whipping a single into the outfield, so that was just good to see. Wander Franco got some time in as well at shortstop. He goes 0 for 2 with a strikeout, and one thing that I guess I'll go ahead and mention now, this was not based on any real information that I had gotten or indication from anything from the Rays, but I had always just kind of assumed that the plan with Franco, I don't even know what the official pronunciation is. Seems like everyone does it different, but I had always thought that when he was ready to come up to the majors, he was going to move to third base because to have a guy like Willy Adames, obviously he's the older player and he's such a good shortstop. There's no reason to ask him to move spots. I don't think has ever probably played third base or very little in the minors. So Adames is going to stay a shortstop. So to have a guy like Franco, but you already have a shortstop, well, we need him in the lineup. So I had always just kind of assumed he would move to third base or whatever position to get playing time. But it seems like that shortstop to third base is kind of the easier transition. With the shifts, he'll practically probably be at the shortstop spot anyway half the time. But I believe every single appearance he's made so far in the spring has either been as a shortstop or as a DH. So that's just kind of hinting to me, and it obviously it's not an official proclamation, but I don't think he had really played a lot of third base in the minors either. So if they're going to continue to track him as a shortstop, then that would lead you most likely to believe that Adames is probably going to be on the way here somewhere shortly. He's 25 years old. I don't believe he's reached his first arbitration year yet, so he's still got plenty of team control, but there was rumors that he was going to be traded to the Reds this past offseason. There's always teams that need a good shortstop like that. His hitting is kind of, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's probably somewhere around a 250 career hitter. It just has not, he's had his struggles. He's had times where he's gotten hot, but has really not established himself as any kind of crazy hitter. So maybe they're just, they're fine with, and this is the thing too, they have so many infield prospects coming up. Xavier Edwards, Vidal Brujan, Taylor Walls that, are going to be second, third shortstop type guys that maybe they really just see Franco as the shortstop of the future. And then for third base, obviously Wendell and Brasso are kind of stopgaps. And, I think they're both, I want to say late 20s. I know Wendell, I think, will be turning 30. I don't know about Brasso, but you'll have those guys play third base, and then really the idea of the future, basically, to make a long story longer, as Steve Summers always says, but is that Willy Adames really maybe not have the future with this team that we were thinking that he would. It was always the theory that I had posited was, we were going to be like the Yankees, basically. Willy Adames was going to be our Derek Jeter, and you bring in such a good player like A-Rod, that had always played shortstop, but you have your shortstop, the captain, whatever you want to say. So you move the A-Rod over to third base, and that's what I thought they would do with Franco. But if that was the case, if that was reality, he would probably be getting some time at third base, and that's not what we've seen. So I just wanted to throw that out there. In that game, Brasso 1 for 2 with a home run as well. So another one of those guys is going to be able to replicate, kind of putting that talk to rest rather early. Yoshi Tsutsugo was in left field, something I thought they were going to move off of just because I didn't think he played that well in the outfield, but spring training is all about, just getting reps, so maybe just as a kind of emergency replacement thing, I don't think they see him as a left fielder. In fact, they've been getting him some time at first base, so that's something to kind of keep an eye on. 24-year-old Tristan Gray, he was a minor leaguer acquired in the Corey Dickerson trade with the Pirates way back ago. What was it? That was like before spring training of 2018. He's had in 2019 he was in Double-A, so that's where he's at, minor league tracking. He had a triple in the 5th and then a walk-off homer in the 7th. So a lot of kind of the second half of any spring training game really is just kind of minor league guys and whatever that they're getting time. So I won't mention too many of those, but I just thought it was interesting and maybe a guy to keep an eye on, throughout that minor league system. He's already 24 years old. And I mentioned Rosarena in right field. So that was a 9-7 win in the first game. On March 1st, Rays lose 6-5 to the Twins. That was a 6-inning game. Tyler Glasnow made his first appearance of the spring. Looks like, I guess he was already a little stretched out. Usually to start the spring, guys are going to 1 inning an appearance, but he got through the first inning. It was a 1-2-3 inning. In fact, he hit 100 miles an hour on the radar gun, so it looks like everything was smooth sailing. And then he walked the 3 of the last 4 batters he faced. His final line, an inning in 2/3, 2 hits, 2 runs, 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, and a home run allowed. Also, 20 of his 35 pitches were thrown for strikes, so not good, just a bit better than 50%, which is not something you want to see. But again, spring training, control will come, I'm sure. I know that's control, I think, has been somewhat of an issue for Glasnow, but nothing to be alarmed of really at this time. He threw that slider, I guess is what it's called. The slutter was, I guess that's why they call it the slider, because the other is a bit funny sounding. But it's not really a traditional slider. It's kind of a cutter that kind of goes down in a way, I guess, which is maybe how you describe a slider. Tomato, I suppose. But he threw that new pitch 4 or 5 times. He said. It's still a work in progress, but he said it felt good and it was hitting the spot that he wanted it to. This is something that not just myself, but really everyone has talked about with Glasnow. If he's going to take that next step and be the ace of the staff, 2 pitches, you have to be really good, and Glasnow is, but I just think it's not realistic that he's going to go through his career, with a fastball and a curveball. We've already seen in his 2 postseasons that he's been a part of that really is not ideal for success, especially in October. And sometimes he has outings where guys are just really figuring him out. You get in a pattern. I mean, it's only 2 pitches. Is it going to go in the dirt, or am I going to get something to swing at? And then other times his fastball and curveball are so good that it's just unhittable. Last year he was working in a changeup. I think he threw it about 5% of the time, and it seemed like not something he was too comfortable with. You can't really experiment with that kind of stuff in the regular season, obviously. So spring is a great time to kind of find a new pitch. And every spring, I think so far for Glasnow, he's tried something different, whether it's messing with his delivery, trying out new pitches, etc. So one of the big, at least in my opinion, storylines of spring thus far is the introduction of a new Glasnow pitch, because I think it's such a kind of, I guess, a little thing on paper, a new pitch that a guy's developing. But I think if he can really establish that third pitch, it really changes the dynamic of the whole staff, because now I think at that point you really do have a definitive ace to kind of be the replacement for Snell, and you can really build your rotation around that. But to have that guy that winner take all game, who do I want? And we saw that. I think it was Glasnow, right, in Game 5 of the ALDS last year, and pitching on the short rest and doing what he did. So I think he's already kind of The Rays have already kind of tracked him to that role, so just another step in that direction, which I think is a good sign. Trevor Richards made his first appearance of the spring. Gave up a hit in the fourth inning. Got through the fourth inning fine. They brought him back out for the fifth, and he faced two batters, gave up a hit to both of them, and that was that. So I think that's just one of those things. So far, spring, it seems like every time they bring a guy back out for the second inning, it goes horribly. I think we saw that with Rich Hill as well. Brian Moran, a 32-year-old left-hander who we had talked about previously. Again, left-handers out of the bullpen, a hot commodity right now. A scoreless sixth inning with a couple of strikeouts. So if he continues to kind of show that he's being slippery and hard to hit, then could track himself potentially in the opening day roster. I don't think that's very realistic, though, but to have depth is a good thing. Meadows, in his two plate appearances, resulted in 2 walks, so that was good to see. Meadows, I think, has always had maybe not a good eye, you would call it, but he's always willing to take pitches, and I think him and Yandy Diaz was another example of they weren't comfortable with their swing, so they were just going to take a lot of pitches. So something that's very much still part of Meadows' game to take, and now hopefully back to the 2019 form where take pitches, get in a favorable count, and then really make them pay. Something that he was certainly not able to really do consistently last season. Josh Lowe, 1 for 1 with a walk, so just those top prospect types keeping an eye on. Good to see them have success. Yoshi was at DH, Wendell at second base, Yandy Diaz played first, Brasso third, just to kind of give you an idea of where these guys are playing. They'll be playing all over the place, so just to kind of show you where the Rays' thought process is. Wendell, for example, has really moved now with the emergence of Brandon Lau as kind of a backup shortstop for Adames, and kind of he really was an everyday third baseman last year until Brasso did what he did. So obviously Wendell can play second as well. In that game, Wendell was hit in the helmet with a pitch, I think early on in the first or second inning, but he was okay. He was just bruised up, but it was definitely a scary thing anytime, pitching up an inning, get hit right on the helmet. That's kind of a scary thing. And Xavier Edwards took his place at the second base spot and hit a 2-run single, I think, in one of his at-bats. So good to see another top prospect doing well. And Brett Phillips played center, and he had a nice sliding catch early in the game. So Kevin Kiermaier still has not made his spring debut. So Brett Phillips and I think Manny Margot and even Josh Lowe as well has kind of taken over that time in center field. Moving now to March 2nd, Rays. It was a 9-3 loss at the hands of the Boston Red Sox. That was the infamous, what are we going to call it? The ESPN game, a full 9-inning game. The Rays get the spotlight and all of the interviews I know made the rounds. Michael Wacha in his first start, I believe, right? Unless I missed something, I think it was. 1 walk in the first, got a strikeout on the changeup, which is kind of his main pitch, which is strange, obviously, because the nature of the term changeup implies that it's a something off of your fastball, your primary pitch, but it's something that Walker really seems to lean on, and something I think that really works with the Rays. They love guys. Because they can't obviously bring in the Garrett Coles and the Trevor Bauers of the world. If you can find guys that have a good pitch and you can utilize that, that strength to your advantage, and Walker's changeup has looked good so far. David Hess gave up 4 home runs facing 11 batters, so that's crazy. Like 1 out of almost every 3 batters he faced, or even, I guess, more. Was hit a home run, 6 total hits, 7 earned runs. He's just looked awful. I think that Cash talked about it after the game. He's a professional. It's fine. He's just working through it. A guy that did not have a lot of success with Baltimore. Made his major league debut against the Rays way back in 2018 and had 6 innings of 3-run ball, I believe, and had a 6 1/3, I think, no hit bid later in his time with the Orioles. So the potential is certainly there, and it seems like with so many kind of reclamation projects the Rays have, the strategy with these newer guys is, we want you to throw more strikes than you were, with your previous spot. Obviously, walks are bad. Just, give, trust the defense, let them make plays behind you. But really with him, he's in the strike zone and guys are just clobbering it right now. So maybe he figures it out, maybe he doesn't. Again, kind of a low risk, high reward type situation. If you can get a guy that can be part of your rotation, that's great. But does not look to be the case at this particular juncture. Chris Mazza, the other part of the Ronaldo Hernandez trade, he's the 31-year-old right-hander, made his Rays debut of the spring, 2 hits, a strikeout over his inning of work, no runs. So good to see him get in the mix. Ryan Thompson, with a clean inning, Ryan Sheriff gives up a triple that comes around to score, and that was the first outing, I believe, for both of those that were a big part of the Rays bullpen a season ago. Wander Franco, he hit cleanup and was the DH. I think, I don't know if that was done purposefully by which side, I don't know, but to have kind of the number 1 prospect in baseball hit cleanup on the ESPN game, I think that was kind of the idea. He was 0 for 3 with a strikeout, so not great at the plate, although he's really come on strong in the last handful of games. Mejia got some time at catcher, Brujan at shortstop, Brett Phillips in center field, Xavier Edwards at second, so they were getting kind of the top prospects some time along the infield there. And then, of course, the real story of the game, of course, kind of the interviews during the game. It is really wild, and I don't think the Rays have gotten the ESPN treatment during spring training, at least since they started doing this, but doing the interviews during the game. And I guess instead of a microphone, because of COVID, for whatever reason, they had Brett Phillips. He had his cell phone in his back pocket in center field during the game. He was out in center, and he had an AirPod in, and was basically kind of being interviewed by the broadcast team with ESPN and answering questions and being himself. He really is a charismatic guy. Seems very likable. He's funny, all that stuff. So I thought, just as a fan, it was really cool to see, and it means a lot to him. I think that. This was his hometown team. I mean, he played high school ball, 15 or 20 minutes probably from the Trop in Seminole, if anyone's familiar with that area in Pinellas County. But just really cool overall. There was a moment, he continued the interview into the bottom of the inning, and he was sitting in the dugout and even took out his phone and did the FaceTime, whatever. But Eduardo Perez, who is one of the commentators on the broadcast, he was a Florida State alumni, and he had mentioned to Phillips that Taylor Walls was a Florida State grad, as is Rays manager Kevin Cash. So they were kind of trying to get him to go over and talk to Cash. Obviously, for good TV at spring training, let's get something actually interesting on the air. So they try to get him to go talk to Cash and, tell him that, Taylor Walls played for his school. So Phillips goes over and says, did you know that Taylor Walls also went to Florida State? And Cash just turns around and he said, why do you think he's playing? And I just thought that was, absolutely terrific. Just a great kind of joke, whatever. But that was kind of a highlight of that whole segment. And then Adames also did an interview, and it seemed like whether it was Adames or Phillips, Arozarena was always in the background doing something silly. So just this team has great camaraderie. Anytime you've got a lot of young guys, young in their career, it's all about having fun. One of the greatest jobs, I guess, in the world, playing a kid's game for the Big Bunny. So it's just really cool to see, and part of what makes this Rays team so much fun. Right now, we've got, looks like, 4 games left to talk about, 40 minutes into the broadcast. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about, obviously, the rest of the games, maybe take a couple calls here and there and get you up on out of here ahead of the rest of the week of spring training. So we're going to take a break here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036 or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCStream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCStream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 66. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 9:41, we are back on the William Haynes Show. When we went to break, we had just talked about the March 2nd game against the Red Sox. So we move ahead to March 3rd. The Rays with a 3-1 win over the Pirates. This was a 6-inning game. I kind of like the shorter games. Obviously, if you're paying for tickets and stuff, it's not as good because you kind of feel like you're getting cheated out of, a third of a game. But that they're, quick and, it's really just the meat of the game. You see the guys you want to see, not just minor leaguers kind of getting through time in the later innings. But this game had certainly a memorable moment. The pitching, Shane McClanahan started off. He had hit 101 in the first inning, and that was really good to see. He had a scoreless inning of work, as did Josh Fleming, making his spring debut, his first appearance. Hunter Strickland in a scoreless inning. Andrew Kittredge and Jeffrey Springs the same. So a lot of guys just getting their inning of work and a walk or a strikeout here or there, but guys just getting through the inning 1, 2, 3, which was a good thing to see. Wander Franco as well in the second inning. He did it early, didn't make you wait for it. And this was in Charlotte Sports Park, by the way. A home run that is believed to be at least 550 feet. It was kind of a slider, I believe, down and away. And Franco just turned on it, absolutely obliterated the baseball. Went flying. It was one of those immediate no-doubters. And if you're watching the games or you've been there, Charlotte Sports Park for spring training or the Stone Crabs, whatever, there's beyond right field, there's office buildings basically, and a tall building. The ball went all the way over. It looks like I guess a guy that was working in the office during the game or was just in there. He went to the roof to check if it was there, and it wasn't, so it probably went all the way over the roof. And Franco was saying after the game that it was the hardest he's ever hit a baseball in a game before, and it was kind of funny to see all the guys talk about it. That it was hit, not that it wasn't a big deal, but it's like we see this all the time. It was just kind of the first time that we were exposed to it in a game setting, so kind of one of those interesting things. Of course, people posting the video, the guy, the future, the legend of Wander begins, that kind of stuff. And it's really true. there's been so much hype around this guy that, the first time he does this or the first time he does that, that we were seeing here with the first home run, it's just so much attention to it, and just the fact that it was such a long home run I just thought was interesting, because we had seen a lot of strikeouts and stuff, and really with Franco is what makes him so good is he doesn't really strike out. He walks more than he strikes out, and he's so good at getting at any pitch in the zone and stuff. So you think of kind of more of a guy that, that's going to hit singles or, base hits, whatever, but a guy that can also hit home runs like that, is insane if he's going to be a guy that, can hit 310, 320 maybe, and also hit 30 home runs. I mean, I don't know how realistic any of that is, but, they're saying, the best prospect in baseball since Mike Trout or Bryce Harper, that's kind of where the mind goes. So who knows how good he'll be. But to hit that home run was a really cool thing to see. Meadows hit his second home run of the spring, and again, as I mentioned earlier, not just to talk the talk with him showing up to Camp Slimmer, but to walk the walk in a way to see him hitting the home runs and having the success at the plate really does remind you of the 2019 season for Austin Meadows. So definitely great to see. Choi made his spring debut at DH, worked a walk I think in his one plate appearance. So good to see him back in action. Miscellaneous notes. It was Wander again at shortstop. I mentioned earlier in the show kind of what that alludes to. Yoshi Tsutsugo making his debut at first base. I believed that's where he played in the Japan League. I thought he was their first baseman for the team that he's playing, but the way that it's being reported, and it's like, oh, the infield coach is doing drills with him, showing him footwork and stuff. Like they're talking about it like he's never played first base before. So I could be mistaken, but I thought that that's something he would be comfortable with. They didn't play him at first at all in 2020. It was just third base and left field essentially. So getting him some time at first base, it is a little tricky because to get him time there, Jimin Choi also being a left-handed first baseman, it would make more sense if one was a righty and one was a lefty, but for them to both be lefties, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense. If you're going to give Choi an off day against a left-hander, it makes sense to put Brasso or Yandy Diaz, a right-handed bat at first base to get that advantage. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work out. Just have that versatility along the infield, I guess, is never a bad thing, and it's really inconsequential, really, these games. So good to get him time at that spot. And Vidal Brujan made his debut in center field. Not something he has done throughout his minor league career, but I guess over the 20 games that he played in winter ball, he was playing some in center field. So I think it was Kevin Cash, or maybe it was just Mark Tompkin in the Times, mentioning Ketel Marte of the Diamondbacks is the only other guy that can do that, meaning that can play basically center field and shortstop / second base, the positions up the middle, if you will. To have that ability to do both of those, just because he's so athletic and so quick and everything, but can also play the infield like that. Anyone who follows baseball knows how good of a player Ketel Marte is and how electric he is. So, and to have that versatility too, looking forward, into the years ahead with how these prospects are going to track. Just something that I think is interesting and just another thing in the mold, basically, is something that's exciting. Moving ahead to March 4th, the Rays with a 5-2 win over the Minnesota Twins. That was a 7-inning game. Ryan Yarbrough made his spring debut with a walk and a strikeout in a scoreless inning. So good to see him get the start. And really the main storyline of that game, Luis Patino. I would classify him, I suppose, as the prized gem of the Blake Snell trade, but people have brought up Blake Hunt, the catcher. Francisco Mejia is certainly a piece, and I think there's another pitcher in there as well that's really exciting. So, but really, Luis Patino, I think when we were talking about that trade, it's the fact that Patino could, if he ends up really, panning out, I guess, because he really is still a prospect, To have him potentially be a 1-for-1 replacement of Snell and to also get those other 3 players, you're talking about a highway robbery, I suppose, that could be even more drastic than the Chris Archer trade. Who knows? But it looks like he was clocking in as high as 96, so the velocity is there. I mean, for a starting pitcher, that's certainly pretty decent. Give up a hit and struck a man out. So was good to see him there. I believe it was, I could be mistaken, was it Nelson Cruz? I think that he got on a nice pitch, a nice breaking pitch. So that was good to see him in a Rays uniform in a game. Also, Stetson Alley, his second appearance, I think, in an inning pitched, 2 walks, no runs allowed. So the control a little bit wild for him. But again, a guy that could throw triple digits out of the pen from the right-handed side. That would be a kind of certainly a valuable asset to the team. So we'll keep an eye on his continued appearances. Jimin Choi played his first game of the spring at first base. He had played the previous day at DH, as I mentioned. Francisco Mejia at catcher. He's just caught in DH. That's what he'll do. Yandy Diaz at third base. Margot was in center, and he went 2 for 3. So it seems like I could say this about half the team, and I probably have on this show, but the guys had so much success and had really outplayed their expectations. Arozarena, Mike Barrasso, and Manny Margot in a big way as well that did much better than expected. Are they going to come back down to earth? That's what logic would tell you, that they're going to go back to what their expectations are. But Margot, to have a multi-hit game in spring and in just 3 at-bats, that was nice. And when he was brought in, it was kind of one of those confusing things because he had really only ever played center field, but you also have Kevin Kiermaier, so is he going to move to the corners? And he ultimately did, and it was a little bit wild of an adventure with him out there and right, but it seems like he's really taken to it. But my point is, don't forget that he's also a very good center fielder. He's great defensive metrics across the board, and all those things you think would allude to Kevin Kiermaier being dealt, and he has not yet. I obviously wouldn't rule it out, mainly because they've got guys that today could step in his place. And then, of course, the guy in the future looks like the center fielder of the future, Josh Lowe, and as we mentioned, Bruhan and other guys that can play center field as well. Excuse me. So that was that for a 5-2 win over the Twins. On March 5th, the Rays, with a 6-5 loss to the Boston Red Sox in a 7-inning game. It was Rich Hill making his Rays debut in the spring. He did not get a single out. If you watched or listened to any of the games this year, they've got basically the rule where if a pitcher has thrown 20 pitches in an inning, no matter how many outs there are, you can just roll it, basically just end the inning right there. So that was the case with Rich Hill. So certainly not a great sign. I don't know if this game was televised. I didn't see it. He had given up 3 hits, 2 walks, and by the time all was said and done, 4 total runs. I think only 3 of them were earned, but nitty gritty. And again, you leave with men on base anyway. So, just really apparently rough for him. That's kind of what it looked like. And there was a pretty extensive piece in the Times, talking with him after the game, and he mentioned that he's had years where his spring is really good and then his regular season is not as good, and then there's times where his spring training sucks and then he goes out and has a really good regular season. So you see that in the NFL too. The teams that go 4-0, and like the Lions, the year they went 0-16, they were 4-0 in the preseason, and you see teams that go 0-4 in the preseason and win the Super Bowl. It's your starters aren't even playing. It really doesn't matter. So the spring outing for him there, and the fact that it's his first, I know he's thrown bullpens and sim games and stuff, but just one of those things, for a 41-year-old, obviously it's not nerves, but it's just one of those things. But it was rough sailing. And another interesting thing about Rich Hill that I did not realize, not only the fact that he's 41 years old, which I know Tom Brady has kind of normalized the 40-year-old athletes in Tampa Bay, but he's so old. He's basically Kevin Cash's age, but not just that. He played with Kevin Cash in Boston. I don't know if it happened, but there's a chance that Kevin Cash was a catcher that he caught Rich Hill in a game. That would be pretty cool. And now he's managing him, and maybe pulling him out in a World Series game. Who knows? And then also when Cash was the bullpen coach I think the bullpen or I don't know. He wasn't a pitching coach in Cleveland while Rich Hill was there. So that was just kind of an interesting name that they have a kind of a background. So obviously it's Kevin Cash understands what's going on, and I'm sure we'll see Rich Hill. How are they doing in the spring, whether it's every 5th day, every 6th day, or whatever, but hopefully he'll be able to at least get an out in the next outing. I guess we're talking about an infinite ERA right now with no outs recorded, but either way, he made his debut. Diego Castillo also making his spring debut. It was one of those things. Kevin Cash doesn't put a lot of emphasis on trying to get guys time in the spring. The main priority, which makes sense, is just that they'll be healthy and ready for the regular season. So there was no rush to get him involved, as has been the case with Choi, and obviously Kevin Kiermaier is yet to appear in the game. It's a long season. It was 6 months ahead of us. Let's not hurt ourselves trying to get in a game in March when we're going to need you hopefully in September and October. But a clean 1-2, they're not a 1-2-3 inning, but he gave up a hit but no runs. So it's good to see, and it looked like everything was normal. There was another pitcher as well, Joe Ryan, who I didn't really think much of, and he's just a minor leaguer. But apparently his fastball throughout the minors has had, I guess, like the lowest contact rate of any fastball. So the headline in the Times was not your average Joe fastball or something dumb like that, but that he had a scoreless inning as well with a strikeout. Chris Ellis with another 2 innings, kind of just a minor league hand, and that was it from the pitching side. Looking at where guys were playing position-wise, it was Joey Wendell at shortstop. He got a couple of at-bats there. Then Wander Franco took over for him at the shortstop spot. Went 2 for 2 with a run batted in, so his batting average, I think, right now in spring training, obviously limited at bats, but he's batting like over 400 right now. So he's certainly making that push to get major league time. I don't know that he's going to get it. People are talking about it like it's like it goes without saying he's going to be in the majors this year. He's not played above high A ball. I mean, I believe so. Start in Montgomery in Double A or whatever the new Double A affiliate is, and maybe he plays the second half of the year in Triple A. Like, let's not rush this. That's my stance on it. But people are, and he's making a push. Obviously, he's made comments that he wants to play in the major leagues, and he's only 20 years old. So, that's just one of those things. But he got another couple of hits. Francisco Mejia at DH got a hit and a walk, and then Brasso with some time over at third base. And then looks like the last game that we have, March 6th, which was a couple of days ago now. The game scheduled for March 6th against the Braves was canceled. It was delayed with rain, and then they just decided, we're not going to be able to get it in. And obviously, spring training, they're not going to do doubleheaders or make anything up. I think the Rays only get one more off day the rest of the spring, so they're going to need it. March 7th, so the next day and yesterday, an 8-4 loss to the Twins in an 8-inning game. Michael Wacha getting back on the bump. 2 innings of work, a hit, 1 strikeout. He was working all 4 pitches, and including his cutter, which was a pitch that struck out Nelson Cruz. That's what I meant earlier. It wasn't Patino. It was Wacha in the other game against the Twins. So, and also in the 21 pitches that he threw, 15 were thrown for strikes. If you've listened to my show at all, you know that's I'm not big. Well, that's not true. I'm not huge into like all the super crazy sabermetric stuff. I like to kind of stay more surface level, just as a broadcaster, as listeners, let's not get too crazy with on base plus slugging and stuff like that, only because it's kind of hard to put into perspective. But pitches for strikes to me is a big metric that I look at, and it's easy to just go to the box score. It's usually there, at least in ESPN. But if you're throwing strikes consistently, and obviously you're not, like David Hess and giving up 8 hits, in an outing, it's good because obviously you're getting ahead of hitters. And, if you're throwing strikes all the time, anytime a guy takes, there's a free strike. And if they can't hit you, that's even better. So everything for Walker right now is trending in the right direction. He's, obviously no injuries. All of his outings have gone smoothly. It looks like all of his pitches are going. The changeup is there where it needs to be, and also the cutter was a pitch yesterday that was really working. So I think a guy that expectations initially were relatively low, but a guy that, heck, I mean, he could be, your third starter. Who knows? I think originally we were thinking maybe he'd be the 4th or 5th starter. That stuff is all arbitrary. What does it really mean anyway? But except in the postseason. But a guy that looks like out of the gate, to start the season will be at least a serviceable member of the rotation. I know his year last season with the Mets was a bit rough, but we know also that the Rays have had a history of turning some of these guys around. So all signs good for Walker right now. Colin McHugh made his Rays spring debut, and his first time, I guess, pitching in a game since August of 2019 when his season was cut short. He had signed with the Red Sox to play during the 2020 season and ended up opting out because he was not going to be ready. His arm issues were still going on, so has not pitched in quite some time, so I think it made sense that his first outing was going to be a little rough. It looks like his line, 3 total runs, 3 hits, a walk, 1 strikeout. Josh Donaldson took him all the way out of the stadium, wherever the Twins play, I believe Fort Myers, I want to say. I guess people were saying one of the longest home runs, I guess, hit in that park. And Josh Donaldson, one of the better-known power hitters in the league, but just that Colin McHugh was throwing pitches that were, able to be really crushed, squared up, whatever. So not a good first outing for him, certainly, and still some time to straighten it out. And he don't believe he's going to be a starter. I think he's kind of a Trevor Richards or a Josh Fleming type of guy that could give you maybe 2 or 3 innings every third day or so, something like that. To cover spot innings, it's going to be a struggle. Guys aren't going to be throwing 150 innings, really. I don't think it's going to take a village. So 2 or 3 innings here or there from a guy like McHugh, if he can kind of establish himself, obviously that's a nice thing to have, without a doubt. Also, Cody Reed, the left-hander, making his spring debut, a 1-2-3 inning. So that was really terrific to see. Only played, I think, 2 or 3 games for the Rays last year. We acquired him from the Reds, and I believe that was that series in Miami against the Marlins. I think that was when Arozarena made his debut with the Rays. But that Reed had pitched a couple of those games and then had, I think, a blister issue on his finger, and maybe it was something else. I don't know how that could have kept him out the rest of the way, but he did not appear in any more games the rest of the season. So to have him back, he looked good in the couple of appearances in 2020. So again, another left-hander that's going to be big. We don't have a ton of them, especially now with Alvarado at the door. So someone maybe will have the chance to establish themselves as the primary lefty out of the bullpen, because we know, the way the bullpen is set up, it's not necessarily a closer, it's just high leverage guy. And what do you do when, I can't name a team off the top of my head, but the top of the order's coming up and 2 of them are lefties. You may not want to throw Castillo or Anderson at him. Where's our best left-hander? So maybe it's Cody Reed, maybe it's Ryan Sheriff, maybe it's Shane McClanahan from the left-handed side. But it would be great to have a guy to establish himself in that role. So good to see him getting off to an A start. Also of note, Shane Boz making his, I guess his Rays spring debut. I don't know if this is his first spring training game with the Rays. I believe it was. The third piece of the Chris Archer trade from the Pirates, and he is really tracking nicely in his inning of work. Walked 2, struck out 2, didn't give up any runs. I think he walked the first 2 men they faced, really tough at-bats, and then was able to get out of it without giving up any runs. So that was a cool thing to see. It was with the way the camera angle is, it's so hard to identify pitches anyway, because instead of straight from the mound to home plate, it's kind of off center. But it looked like he had one pitch, and it was a fastball, but it would move like all the way across the plate. Like, it didn't look, he was throwing it 98, 99, maybe 100. But it's, moving all the way across the plate. I've never really seen anything quite like that. I think Shane McClanahan was kind of the other guy that kind of reminds me of that. But kind of, 2 strikeouts was kind of unhittable. So could not quite find the zone. I think the umpire's calls were a little iffy, but interesting to see. And I think he's not played above high A, so if he starts in Double A this year, or then to Triple A, I don't think he would be called up this year. So that's just where he's at. But one of those a sign of things to come potentially. David Hess then came in the next inning and blew the game. In his inning of work, 4 earned runs, 4 hits, strikeout. His ERA, it looks like, is like 42 right now, so really, really bad. Just has not been able to figure it out thus far. Just really not going well. I know the Rays fans have already turned on him. It's just one of those things, but we'll see him more over the spring. But if he doesn't figure it out, I don't know exactly how that works with the minor league contract, if you can just release him or he'll be put on waivers, whatever. But just to have him in Durham in AAA just on your roster, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. So if he can't figure it out, he'll be out on the way, as a failed kind of project. And then Chris Mazza with a 1-run allowed final innings of work. So one of those guys, I believe he is the right-hander from the Ronaldo Hernandez trade. So. And then also the only other thing, it seemed like the regulars in the fields, Adames, Meadows, Rosarena, Lau, Choi, etc. They had not, I guess, played in 3 or 4 days because of the rain out the day before. So it was going to be 5 or 6, I guess, days off they would have had if they didn't play. Obviously with the off day today, so. Was a good chance to see kind of the full lineup. Usually you get maybe half your lineup is kind of your major league starting lineup, but today it was pretty much every guy in the lineup that was going to be, an everyday regular upcoming this season. Adames at shortstop, Meadows in left, Randy in right, Lau at second base, Choi at first. Margot is in center because Kiermaier with the back stiffness is still not ready to go. Yoshi getting some time at third. Brasso the DH, and then Mejia was the catcher. It seems like they've taken it relatively easy. With Zunino has only appeared in a couple of games. And then Blake Hunt also has gotten some time at catcher. So really just seems like Mejia's a chance to kind of prove himself, and I don't know necessarily that you're developing during spring training, but just getting him some reps with these pitchers maybe, because the dynamic. I think Zunino, this will be his last season as a Ray, and Mejia looks like will be the bridge between that and maybe Blake Hunt or whoever is the catcher of the future. We know it's not going to be Ronaldo Hernandez since he was traded, but they're the bridge to whoever that guy is. So. And that takes us to today, where it was an off day. Where, to give you a look ahead, the goal, and it seems like during spring training for me, things have kind of been TBD. I like to kind of find a set schedule, something that works. I did not do broadcast during the spring last year, so I thought this show went pretty well. So maybe we'll do it just like this again next Monday night. So we'll get a full. It'll be 7 games to talk about. So we'll do that. So the games that we will be talking about next Monday night. Tomorrow it is against the Red Sox. That game will be on TV on Fox Sports Sun. You can also stream it, the radio call on MLB.com, which is Neil Solondz. If you're not familiar, works kind of with the Rays broadcasting crew. Not kind of, he does. Wednesday against the Twins. That's also on Fox Sports Sun and the Neil call on MLB.com. Thursday and Friday. Thursday is on the road against the Braves. Friday is on the road against the Red Sox. Neither of those games are on TV or on the radio in any way. So, you check the box score, whatever you got to do, and I'll do the same. And those will be good games, good to talk about, because obviously you won't really know what happened. So, I'll get all the press clippings and whatnot and try and decipher what went down in those. And then the weekend, which is, working for the weekend, all that good stuff. Saturday, the 13th against the Twins. That game is on TV on Fox Sports Sun and also on the radio on WDAE with Dave Wills and Andy Freed, the best broadcast crew in the Major League Baseball. So, like I said, they're doing weekends. So they're doing Saturday and Sunday. The Sunday game against the Braves is just on the radio, not on TV, so you'll just have to listen to that one. And then taking us to next Monday, the 15th, against the Red Sox, that is on Fox Sports Sun on TV and with Neil Solondz and the radio call. So just to give you an idea, and you can access that on MLB.com/Rays, and I'm sure you know how to get that stuff, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. We hit over an hour. I thought, we were running kind of long. I'm not sure how many people had stuff to call in to talk about anyway, although I apologize if there was anyone that wanted to. But definitely tune in next Monday night. We'd love to take some calls then, because certainly there won't be quite as much to talk about, I think, to talk about the first spring training games and this guy's first appearance and that guy's first at-bat, and that's kind of the stuff that takes up the time. But I thought it was a good show. Hope everyone listening enjoyed it, and definitely hope you'll tune in next Monday. We're getting started. We're getting rolling. We'll see you next Monday night.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.
W